Hi everyone and welcome to the All Things ITSM Global Podcast. We're coming to you from FUSION15 in New Orleans. I'm Kirsty McGowan, I'm here with Mark Smalley.
Hi Kirsty.
Carlos Casanova.
Hello Kirsty.
And we're going to chat with Charlie Betz this afternoon. Hi Charlie.
Hello.
Lovely to have you here.
Yes, thank you.
Charlie, we're both involved in the IT for IT forum. We find it a very interesting and worthwhile investment, our time in there. I think lots of people aren't yet familiar with it. Could you give us a brief overview of what is the IT for IT forum?
So IT for IT, reading from the Open Group statement here, it's a reference architecture for managing the business of IT. So it is a reference model or an operating model that is a very concise and structured statement of how you put together your IT management systems and data to enable the end-to-end delivery of digital value.
I can hear lots of people thinking, but surely we've got ISO 20000 or ITIL.
What's the
what's
difference?
the difference?
Very good
what's the
point.
difference?
Why do we need something else?
Yeah.
Why do you need something
Yet-
else?
yet
It's a
another-
very
yeah.
good question, and this was a question that the Open Group leadership asked us in some probing detail because they didn't want to be in the business of reinventing the wheel. The standards community is a nonprofit community. They can't afford to be reinventing things. So if you look at ITIL, ITIL is roughly 2,000 pages, I believe, across 5 volumes of extensive narrative guidance, checklists, lists, best practice statements, best practice standards. ITIL is essentially a statement of requirements. And if you were to take ITIL through a systems development life cycle, the next thing you might do would be to generate a conceptual and logical architecture, which ITIL does not have. It has some pictures that start to look architectural, but they've not been developed with an architectural bent, and nor is there the architectural method behind them, such as you would see using notation such as Archimate and using the TOGAF methodology, which TOGAF of course stands for the Open Group Architecture Framework. So the two really are very much complementary. IT for IT itself is much more terse. It's a couple hundred pages, order of magnitude less content. And it is targeted very much towards those who are doing the day-to-day implementation of the IT management systems and wrestling with questions like, what's the relationship between my project portfolio management system and my IT service management system? What other system? Do I need a source control system, a package management system? How do these things fit in? It also does bring in things that ITIL has deliberately not addressed because of the particular history and structure of ITIL that we're all, I think, somewhat familiar with. Yeah. Originally, ITIL was part of a triumvirate, including Prince 2 for project management and SSADM for architecture. You remember SSADM?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's still some aspects.
Yeah, your historical perspective is always a great bonus when it does,
And so, but IT for IT is about the end-to-end delivery and must include things like the role of enterprise architecture, the role of project portfolio management, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so would it be a fair comment to say that where ITIL gives guidance primarily for practitioners to do their daily work, IT for IT goes into the detail that you need to improve the flow of information across the whole IT function?
Yes, and the actual flow of IT services.
Yep.
As the services move with increasing rapidity and iteration through an IT life cycle of what we call one of the value streams is required to deploy. So there's four value streams: strategy to portfolio, required to deploy, request to fulfill, and detect to correct. And these are the major breakdown of the whole concept of an IT value chain. We are inspired by the Michael Porter value chain model.
So, recently, I don't know if it was a few weeks back, you were out in Edinburgh.
Yes, we launched.
So, can you speak to what happened there? Obviously, you didn't go there just for the scenery.
I had a lovely afternoon walking around on High Street on Castle Rock, but no, it's true. So the standard version 2, technically, of the standard went live last week in Edinburgh, Scotland at the Open Group, one of the Open Group quarterly membership meetings. The Open Group meets quarterly. The tendency or the history has been to meet twice a year in the US and twice a year in Europe. And the standard go live landed in Edinburgh. We had Mary Jarrett, who is the IT for IT lead at Shell, keynoted, gave a wonderful keynote on their journey, how they had gone through the process of, trying to operationalize ITIL, struggling with the fact that they needed an enterprise architecture, and then of course that leading to, some further discussions with HP about, we really need you to help fix this. We shouldn't be in the business of developing an architecture.
Right.
And of course, I'd been through a very similar experience with my role at a major U.S. bank, where I found myself also having to develop that architecture.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm dealing with now. I mean, and I know we've spoken a little bit about it. I'm not that familiar with the details of IT for IT, but we always get into. I think most of us who've been in this space long enough, regardless of why we're brought into organizations, we always end up in sort of an architectural role. Not only because we have that background, but we always end up there because we see what they're trying to get done is not going to be solved with that point solution that they're trying, and they're architecturally flawed. So we end up kind of, somehow, some way, it seems like we always end up in that seat trying to re-architect their solution and their broader, you really need to. So, I mean, it's kind of great to see a little bit more of a tool that, I can take with myself and, rather than just kind of do it just based on pure experience, if it's something that's got more support. So are you seeing more independents, more organizations, professional service organizations starting to pick that up and leverage it?
Absolutely. We have 40 members now in the IT for IT forum, and they include the gamut from smaller consultancies who are looking for the next thing, all the way up to Exxon, Shell, Boeing. Right. I'm co-leading the asset management and technology lifecycle management work stream with the IT asset manager at Boeing. People are really seeing the need and the benefit of this. I would say, I think one of the things to understand is that many other industries have settled on this model of a nonprofit open core of IP that is built and sustained on neutral ground. Right. We see this in telco, the ETOM framework, the Enhanced Telecom Operating Model, with some of its ancillary, I think they may call it frameworks now, I'm not so familiar. You see the same thing in retail with the Association for Retail Technology Standards, extensive data model there that is used across the retail industry to ensure interoperability between the oracles and the Teradatas. Right. And I could go down the list of other industries that have gone this route.
Right.
Yeah, so the cobbler's children finally get shoes. You, Charlie, you just mentioned the benefits that you can get out of an investment in IT for IT. Cost savings. Can you talk to that? What's the potential as far as cost savings are concerned?
Well, Gartner is on the record. Gartner looked at it a year and a half ago and said they thought that if you systematically applied IT for IT and using it to rationalize your IT portfolio, that you could get up to 15% savings across the IT value chain.
That's pretty impressive.
I don't know the method that was used, and of course I'm a natural skeptic, but
but if you take 7, if you take half.
If you take half of that,
the
redundancy that we see in IT management practices is just immense. You go in and you do an assessment of a large IT shop, and I'm talking about the 1 billion to 4 to 5 billion, the really real money, organizations, and they have more tools than they know what to do with. IT people love tools. They got every single one. Yeah. And yet and the flow is just broken. Right. So, you get rid of half the tools and improve the flow and the pace of work, you're increasing the delivery of business value, you're cutting costs. What's not to like?
The costs of managing all those tools
it's immense.
Huge.
Well, but there's also the ones that they've bought them, they're licensed.
And they're shelfware.
They need a new stockroom just to house all of that sort of thing.
Exactly.
At least now it's digital, so they don't have to actually have the shelves, right? It's just the terabytes of data.
But that sales rep calls every year and wants their 18%.
You mentioning value just there, Charlie, it's a segue into another topic that we might use to close off the session. You recently introduced me to Don Reinertsen.
Yes.
Work on lean that everybody seems to refer to, and in particular the concept of cost of delay.
Right.
I think our audience would benefit from a bit of insight into what's the significance of
Cost of, of Reinertsen and cost of delay. Let me just say a couple words about Mr. Reinertsen, who I've never met. So he's actually was trained at the Naval War College, and served, I believe, as an officer running nuclear reactors on submarines. So not an IT person at all. And in the 80s, he started looking at the problems that manufacturing product development was having in applying naive assembly line metaphors to R&D. Again, completely divorced from IT. He was just asking, why can't we have new radios quicker, or other industrial, new alternator types better, faster, I mean. And so what he discovered was that actually product development was a very different process from production. And that you needed to, and this is where he wrote a book in 1991 with a fellow named Preston G. Smith. It's called Developing Products in Half the Time. You can buy it for 25 cents used on Amazon. For my money, that book predicted 25 years ago all of what we're seeing today in the Agile movement. Right. It talked about culture, it talked about self-organized, product-centric teams, it talked about self-organization. And one of the most important concepts that he brings in is cost of delay. Because if you don't understand the cost of not having something, you really don't understand the business value of doing the work. And so you kind of frame it in the negative, you frame it in the opportunity cost. Well, if I don't do this, then what's the penalty? Well, if the penalty is $1 million a month, regulatory fine, then the cost of delay is $1 million a month for not getting that system out there in time. But there are other forms of cost of delay, like not making the market in time and allowing your competitor to achieve a dominant position in, say, the cloud infrastructure as service market.
Yeah, so in practical terms, if you're faced with the choice of, I've got 3 pieces of work to do, which should I do first?
Yes.
Cost of delay is an instrument that helps you generate much more value.
And not to cut you off, I know but I think that principle I think applies in a lot of different ways too, right? The opportunity lost, whether it's at a lower level because information is not available to get things done, the efficiencies aren't there. If we can start measuring that in a more quantifiable way, you can then start justifying some of these efficiency efforts that we don't because it's soft money.
That's true.
Yeah,
and it's a hard sell because it's not a bottom line number. So.
And I know we're probably running long here, but the other person whose work complements Reinertsen's perfectly is Doug Hubbard, who wrote the book How to Measure Anything. So if you are in conversations where people say, well, how do I measure cost of delay? It's intangible. I mean, there's a whole book, where it's like, no, there's no such thing as intangible. And so by using, some, wisdom of crowds types, things like planning poker. The trouble with IT, we try to be too precise. You don't, sometimes an order of magnitude is good enough. And then when you have that, then you actually are able to make a business case. Now the interesting thing, and here I'll just leave you with this, a lot of the governance and control processes, the management processes that are put in, as risk controls, they get challenged a lot for imposing delay on the overall system of IT delivery. Well, if you understand in the aggregate your cost of delay, can't you start to quantify whether your change process is adding or subtracting value from your enterprise?
Very good.
It's possible.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Charlie. Thanks for what you said before. I think this is going to be a session that people are going to listen to several times to get the depth and significance of what you shared with us. Thank you very much.
Charlie.
Yeah.